Welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. When you're ready to transform your sales for today's transforming market, we've got you covered. With your host, the queen of cold calling and founder of Salesology, award-winning author, speaker, sales trainer, and coach, Wendy Weiss.
Hi, welcome to Salesology, conversations with sales leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. And I am your host, Wendy Weiss. I am the founder of Salesology and the Salesology prospecting method. I'm known as the queen of cold calling, and I am here today with my special guest, Jim Mitte, who is the president of Turtle Hut Internet Marketing. The formal introduction. Jim is an industry-leading internet marketing expert with over 23 years of experience. His digital agency focuses on generating leads and making phones ring. And what could possibly be more important than that? So welcome, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be on with the queen of cold calling.
Well, thank you for that. And so first, Jim, I do have to ask you the question that is on everyone's mind. Why Turtle Hut?
That is a very common asked question. So way back in 1999, believe it or not, the internet actually still existed back then. Me and a couple of friends started a web hosting company called Turtle Hut, and we were your protective shell on the internet. Now, since then, we've evolved a ton into just a full service internet marketing agency, but I've always kept the Turtle Hut history.
Okay, got it. So how did you get into this, Jim? Tell us a little bit about the backstory, the secrets that no one knows. How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. So I went to school for marketing. I always was very passionate about marketing. And I was fortunate enough to do an internship and then get my first job at a regional advertising agency here in the Detroit area. And so we were working with a lot of regional-based clients, Midwest and beyond, things along those lines. And I was doing everything for them. They did hire me to become their, expert in internet marketing, but this was back in 1999, and nobody even knew what that meant. So I was learning and trying and, buying ads for our clients, doing all kinds of things. And through that process, I really, really got into the details of internet marketing because we were spending at the time for many clients, $1 million a month, which to me was just an insane amount of money in broadcast, in television, radio, and things along those lines. And I was enamored with how well we could track the internet spend in comparison. So it was really all the ways of measuring the return on the investment for our clients back then that really just had me, full into internet marketing. Being able to prove that return on investment was just so huge to me. It's kind of funny because the agency was still pretty small back then, and I was a pretty ambitious guy. And so I'm doing all the internet stuff. And then all of a sudden, an account manager would leave and they say, Jim, can you handle this account and do this and do this? So I'm wearing 50 different hats. And I remember one of the times we were looking at one of those accounts, and we were spending $250,000 a month in 3 major markets on broadcast. And I said to our media buyer, I said, well, how do we know if these ads are actually working? Because I'm used to tracking the internet stuff. And she said, well, we know the demographics of the buyer we're trying to reach. And so, we assume that works. And I said to her, well, does the client have call tracking? And she said, I don't know. Why don't you ask? So I basically got the call records from our client because we knew back then if an ad ran while it was on broadcast, if the phone didn't ring within 5 minutes of it, most people didn't write down the phone number and call later. They either call now or they don't call at all, or they call next time they see that ad because of the frequency. And so with that in mind, I backtracked or cross-referenced all the call volumes to the ad spends and ended up saving us like 40% the next month with better results. So it really just proved to me that, gosh, that's really cool. You can do that to some degree from a broadcast, cross-reference to phone calls, but Google Analytics makes it so much easier. So I was just bought in for internet marketing and have been doing it ever since.
Okay, so what does Turtle Hut do? What does your company do? How do you serve your clients?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. So We really focus on lead generation businesses. So businesses that can be either B2B or B2C, but their needs are truly down the path of not direct selling, not to try to get somebody to walk into a door, but get that phone to ring or that web form to fill out where there's some kind of salesperson involved in that process. So we do a lot of like home service-based businesses, but we'll do professional service-based businesses. We do large ticket sales, B2B and B2C. So it really just depends. But why I exist is I just love helping small businesses grow. And so, having them use the right strategies to generate the best cost per lead is really what keeps me excited. Unfortunately, in our space today, in the internet marketing and digital marketing space, there are so many people out there that are doing so many shady / smoke and mirror type of things that I find so frustrating. So I just really like to be honest and transparent with our clients, letting them know exactly what's working and not working and how to best spend their dollars and see the things that I would want to see if I were in those shoes. Okay,
great. So that perfect segue into my next question, which is what's working, what's not working? If you're, what are some of the things that you see when a small business owner says, I'm going to start doing some internet marketing, or we need to do more internet marketing? Like, what are the mistakes they're making? What should they be doing instead? What works? What doesn't work?
So certainly, I think the biggest mistake I see out there is somebody that says, okay, I just want to go buy ads here, right? Whether here they heard that TikTok's the latest thing, or that Facebook's where they need to go, or the Google ads is the end all be all, without ever looking at it as a holistic approach. So I'm a huge fan of the idea that the hub and spoke model, with the website being the hub. If you don't have the right website with good quality content, organized in a logical way so both Google and your consumers know what it is you do and how well you do it, with then good calls to action and then good tracking systems. So once we get them there with those calls to action, can we figure out how they got there and if they did actually communicate? Did they fill out the form? Did they call? What led to that phone call, so you can track it all? If you don't have that foundation set up right on that website, then most of the other spends that you're trying to drive traffic to are all for naught. So many times I'll have people say, well, I tried, Google ads and they didn't work. Well, most of the time, probably all the time, we find we can make Google ads very successful. But if you don't have the right, landing area for a website that tells the story with a good call to action and good quality score, you're going to pay a lot more and get far less conversion rate, which means less, or higher cost per lead than somebody who did it right in the first place. So I really think the biggest pitfall is not having that foundation done well. And a lot of people just kind of look at the aesthetics of that, with their web page and say, oh, it looks good, so everybody will understand. But there's a lot of nuances in how that content's organized and how Google understands it for how that's going to ultimately affect your cost per lead and ultimately cost per sale.
So am I understanding that what you're saying is a lot of business owners, maybe they hire someone, maybe they do it themselves, they build a website and they don't have the analytics set up and they don't actually know what converts or doesn't?
Certainly, that seems to be a good portion. A lot of people don't understand that you can use dynamic call tracking systems. So if somebody does get to your website, I know exactly which ad that they clicked on in order to get there and call you or fill out that form. So then we can analyze, what was the content in that ad? What was the messaging? Where was it? The demographics we focused on, all of those things. So we can keep chasing the things that are working best and, change budgets and so on for the things that are not working as well. So yeah, tracking is absolutely huge in internet marketing. And like I said, it really all just starts with that foundation. If you don't have the good foundation, you're driving all this traffic to it. It's like a house without a good foundation. The house will fall apart.
Yeah, that is true. So does this change depending on the size of the company? Like a small business, maybe a mid-sized business, an enterprise level business? How does it apply to different size companies?
I think it really can. I think a mistake a lot of small businesses make is they first start out and they say, I'm going to do, X service. I'm going to be a painter, let's say. And so I can go paint. And then people say, well, do you paint outside of houses? And they go, oh, the web looks nice. I'll paint the outside of a house. And do you paint trim? Yes, I paint trim. Right. And then all of a sudden, do you do drywall work? Well, yes, I have to do drywall work in order to fix it. And they keep going further and further and further down these paths where they're doing all of these things, but maybe not that good at all of them. And so we can have the same kind of problem with how the foundation can work for a small business, where they want to claim they do 50 things, but they're really not that great at any of them. And they're diluting their efforts down those paths. And so they're getting, mediocre results at best on all of those paths versus really just focusing on what they're best at and keeping that their primary message and target. Now, obviously, the business goes larger and larger. They can become experts at more than one area. And so you can still use that same foundation. An HVAC company here locally, they started out with doing HVAC, and all of a sudden they realized that, half of what they do is electrical for that anyway. So they hire a bunch of electricians. Well, now they can take on customers that are only looking for electrical work, right? But they didn't start that way, as being an expert at air conditioning and then electrical at the same time.
So if you are working with your clients and you're driving leads, let's assume that they've got the website that is set up properly. It's got the analytics. You're working with them to send leads their way. Can you give us some advice to, let's say, a business owner or a sales manager that's managing a team? They have salespeople. You're driving the leads to the salespeople. What are some do's and don'ts there for the salespeople or for the manager or business owner that manages those salespeople? What should they be thinking about when they look at those leads? What should they be doing?
Sure. Well, I think the first thing that comes to mind is answering the phone, as ridiculous as that sounds. We've had lots of clients, because we track phone calls, that will find that 20% of their inbound phone calls are not answered. And so you look at that and you go, gosh, well, if we paid $10 a click to get them there, we had a $10 conversion rate or 10% conversion rate. So we're $100 cost per lead. You're only answering, you're not answering 20% of them. What does that cost? That part never is making any sense to me at all. So certainly tracking that they're actually answering the phone. If there is a message left, or if it's a form or something along those lines, the faster you can get back with the prospect, the better. What the internet has done from a consumer shopping perspective is really made it so easy. So if I go on Google right now and let's say I want to install outdoor lighting on my property, so I go look for an electrician. Well, there's the electrician, number one, shows up on Google. I click on the ad or I see them there. Great, that looks like they can do what I want. I fill up that form or I pick up the phone and call them. If I don't get the answer I want immediately, it is so easy for me just to go to the second one in line and do the same thing, or the third one in line and do the same thing. And so, if you're not going to be super responsive down that path, you're gonna potentially lose. Like, oh, I got this great lead, but if you wait 24 hours to get back to them, they probably already have somebody that gave them a quote that they might have already bought from. So you really want to be extremely responsive. I would say those are probably the first two areas. Beyond that, I think, you're certainly probably the better expert at sales coaching and what, how do you actually drive them through your buying process? What questions do you ask? All that's going to be very industry specific. But I think the better you can answer the phone and the quicker you can get back from a responsive perspective are very, very key to success of these leads.
Absolutely. And, I have read that if you don't get back to that lead, if you don't respond to that lead within minutes, that they actually start to forget. And, because I have clients that'll come to me and say, oh, we have all these leads. They filled out this form 3 weeks ago or whenever it was. And, I call them up. I'm looking at the form that they filled out. They don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah.
And the research, the research I've read says if you don't respond within minutes, they start to forget that they even filled out the form or whatever it is they did. Yeah.
Well, in our industry, and they still exist today, they're not as popular as they used to be, but a lot of people still fall for them, are these what we call lead aggregators. It's a web service that, let's say, buys an ad and says, we can solve your problem, Mr. Customer. But the customer is not reaching out directly to the end, supplier of that business. They're reaching out to this aggregator. What that aggregator does is they sell that lead to 5, 10, 15 companies. And so you'll find in those cases, to really exacerbate the problem you're talking about, in those cases, if you don't call within minutes, 3 of your competitors already have. And by the time you call, they're cursing you out and hanging up on you, saying, I didn't contact you. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Leave me alone. And you're like, what did I do wrong? I just picked up the phone and called because you told this aggregator that you wanted help. So yeah, it could really be certainly a challenge.
Yeah. Yes, I have clients that have experienced that. And so I'm going to take a pause here. We're going to take a pause here for a word from our sponsor, Salesology 3X Appointments. And you know how frustrating and stressful it is when you leave every sales meeting wondering if your sales team knows how to sell because they're not selling and all you ever hear from them are excuses. They blame your marketing. They say you need to do some social media. They say you need a new website. And you know something's wrong, but you don't quite know what it is. And you're even starting to wonder if it's you. You don't have a lot of options. You could fire them all and start from scratch, and that would be expensive. And you're really sick of waking up in the middle of the night wondering how to fix this. Well, imagine instead that you have an easy-to-use, replicable system that ensures your team can easily schedule qualified appointments. And imagine that your team is excited and motivated. No more excuses. You feel good. Salesology 3X Appointments can make that happen. If you're a business owner or a sales manager with an underperforming sales team, let's talk. Click on the link to my calendar in the show notes and schedule a time, and I look forward to meeting you. And now we are back with Jim Mitte, president of Turtle Hut Internet Marketing. And we are talking about leads. This is such an important conversation, Jim, because I think so many sales professionals do not understand the difference between a lead and an actual prospect, an actual qualified prospect. And they are not the same thing.
No, they're really not the same thing. And then how they drive through that funnel even becomes, dramatically different. People use all those terms very, very, interchangeably, and they really shouldn't be. I mean, you have the prospect and then get to a suspect. The lead is just somebody who raised their hand. Now, that said, a lot of organizations don't get a lot of leads. So their first step down this path to generating a sales funnel might just be cold calling or something along those lines. So then they're really starting out in left field with people that don't necessarily know what they do or are interested in what they do. And they're calling those people even prospects sometimes. But at the end of the day, the leads are, at least somebody who raises their hand and says, yes, I want to know more about what it is your service is. I'm probably somewhere in that purchasing process of that service.
So can you give us some examples, some kind of before and afters, stories of successes, like where the client was before, where they are now, or maybe even some things that didn't work?
Yeah, I guess it's maybe I'll answer it slightly a different way, but the ones that I find the most interesting aren't the ones that are kind of a given, that there's already a market out there for these products. I use the painter as an example, right? Well, if I get on a client that's a painter and I find out their local service area, and we build a great foundation of a website, we buy ads, I know there's market demand for painters. I know somebody's looking to have their house painted, right? So I know I can do great there, and that's always fun and exciting. But the ones that really get me excited are the weird esoteric businesses, the ones that I didn't even know existed till they walked in my door. These small niche B2B players or B2C players that, sometimes you just have to ask yourself the question, is anybody actually searching for what it is this business even does? So how am I going to find a lead for somebody that doesn't know what they need? And so we have to do a little bit more research than normal to make sure we think we can actually help these clients. But they're the ones that when we have the success, it's like, this is so cool because I didn't even know XYZ existed last week. And now we're marketing for them and they're getting leads and they've never had a lead in their entire life. right? It's all been about cold calls and everything else they did, try to open doors to their market. And now people are reaching out to them, excited for the services they offer. So those ones really get me excited.
So are you saying that these clients did not understand who their target was, who they should be reaching out to?
Yeah, they may have understood their target, but they didn't have a good way to cost effectively reach them. And so a lot of where our focus is for these service-based leads is really starting down the search engine optimization path and Google marketing. We start there and then we go full circle for as we saturate certain areas. But we found if we're going to buy ads, our best cost-effective lead in this type of space is in Google advertising. And so doing that well, we produce a really good return in that. But what we're doing is actively looking for people that are in buying mode to find a solution to their problem. Now, in the companies that I was mentioning before, they've never, they're such niche focused that they don't, nobody was necessarily contacting them because they didn't do any of that correct. And so they have very tiny niche markets. And so how do you reach these niche markets that, in one case was a global niche market, and it was all about how do you reach travel agents trying to find a very specific software problem. And you're like, wow, do people even know this stuff? Like, again, I had no idea until they walked in. And so then I had to go actively look for how they can help them and then do it. And that's where, to me, it's just as exciting as really trying to help the average, contractor or painter or businesses. We all know somebody has a problem they need to solve. So they're going to go down those paths.
Okay. So I'm curious what you see, looking into the future for lead generation.
Yes. So again, because we do focus so much on lead generation, and maybe I should rewind just a hair and explain kind of the 30-second overview of how we kind of look at the marketing spectrum of where we take our clients. So like I said, we start with that hub concept, which is the website, and drive everybody to that. And then we almost always immediately go into, SEM, search engine marketing, where we're buying targeted keyword ads based on demand of what it is that person does. So from there, though, we go into more of a retention strategy where people that know they exist but haven't reached out to them yet, and we go to try to find them that way. So that could be things like email marketing or remarketing ads and things along those lines. As we saturate those areas, we then try to get more into what I call the plant the seed marketing. So if we use let's use an electrician, for example. Electrician as a client, it's easy to buy ads for somebody looking for an electrician, right? And we buy those ads and we get them shown well, and there's so much demand for that. But let's just pretend, the 500 people in their service area that call every month, they've already reached them and they want more than those 500 leads. What do we do next? I call it the planting the seed concept, because I might go on, let's say, Facebook and look for a target demographic of homeowners that, $100,000 more in household income, and plant the seed that, hey, since we're going into summer, have you thought about a ceiling fan being installed? So that person didn't wake up today going, gosh, I want a ceiling fan. But if I plant their seed in their head that they want a ceiling fan installed, then I get them to reach out to my client and say, hey, now I want a ceiling fan. So the one's need-based and the other is, planting the seed kind of advertising that says this is a perfect target for us. That person just didn't wake up today and know they had a problem, but they probably still would like a solution.
That is very, very interesting, because it's so obvious, the people that I need X and they go looking for X. But this idea of planting a seed, can you talk a little bit more about the effectiveness of that, and what, if you're doing that kind of campaign, what kind of results might someone expect, might a company expect?
Yeah, and certainly. And so, these are going to be just holistic numbers. Every instance can be a little bit different. But generally, we see when we're buying demand-based ads, we, let's say we get a $10 cost per lead. If we're doing the plant the seed-based advertising, we see it being normally 3 to 5 times more on a cost per lead basis, because we have to reach a lot more people that were not actively looking to solve a problem to find somebody to plant the seed in their head to get them to want to convert. So that's where we usually go down that path secondarily, after we've already saturated the target market for the people that are actually looking to solve the problem. But when we do that, we also see, especially like in seasonal businesses, will do both. So, HVAC is a great example. So right now in Michigan, it's summer, and in summer it gets hot, and air conditioners get turned on, and that's when they break. And people want to get that fixed, or they want a new one because they don't have one in the first place, and it's hot. That's all well and good. Well, come, let's say, late August, September, it's nice fall. Nobody's turning the heat on yet. Nobody's really running the air conditioning. Air conditioners aren't breaking. Those companies, what do? So that's when you can start, the idea of a tune-up and plant the seed. Like, have you had this looked at ahead of time? Or a programmable thermostat, or having your unit inspected and cleaned up? Energy efficiency type of concepts, right? HEPA filtration. There's other ideas you can then plant the seed in people's heads to maybe not create as lucrative business as selling a brand new air conditioner when it's 100 degrees outside, but certainly keeping the crews working and making good profit through those seasonal patches.
So does this include some component of then nurturing? You're planting the seed. I would imagine you need to continue until that lead picks up the phone or sends the email or fills out the form. There must be some sort of continuous nurturing to reinforce the seed you're trying to plant.
Depending on the business and the industry and how long those sales cycles are, without a doubt, sometimes they can be very elaborate. Sometimes they're very short. And certainly, as we talked about, when the lead actually gets handed over to the company from a salesperson perspective, what does that sales process look like? What does that follow-up process look like? And every industry is, of course, going to be different, but setting those systems up, I think, makes an absolute ton of sense. And then obviously tracking those systems as well. No different than we track, what is your cost per lead? Well, if you build out a sales system and you're, closing 30% of the leads, well, then maybe analyze your sales system and see what changes you can make to get that number up to 50%, right? Maybe, it's not always just pricing, but how do you interact? What's your first step? What's your second step? What is your follow-up step? How do you handle objections? All those things, if you can better refine that sales process, that's, from my perspective, the most cost-effective way to get the most out of the leads we're generating for you.
Absolutely. And it's always been kind of amazing to me, the number of companies that I see that have no way of tracking much of anything. So I love what you're saying about tracking, because you need, in the way that you're talking about tracking those leads coming in, the leads you're generating, and having a system to do that. Companies also need to have a system to track what is happening to those leads once they come in and how salespeople are handling them.
Without a doubt. Yeah. Tracking makes so much of a difference in all these aspects. It was kind of funny. I was talking to a business owner who was talking to a competitor of ours and, trying to make a decision between the two of us. And he asked for a sample of one of our reports, and I showed it to him, and it's on one page. And he said, your competitor, they have this massive dashboard with 137 metrics that they share on a monthly basis that I can log in at any time to see this numbers. And why don't you do that? And I said, well, I can give you access to all those things, but I made a report in such a way that it showed exactly what I'd want to know if I were you, the business owner, right? And so if I can see that on one page, I can actually know what's working. If I show you 173 metrics, you don't even know what to look at. You have no idea what's working. And that's all part of the same smoke and mirrors. Well, here's this huge report, but I don't even understand it. So why do I'm ready to open and look, versus simplifying those metrics to the point they make sense and are trackable, right? As a business, you don't want 250 KPIs. You want a specific job or role, 3, 5, maybe 7. As an entire company, maybe only 20, because they can't all be key performance indicators. And yet so many people in our space, again, I mentioned the smoke and mirrors earlier, are a really big fan of putting all these, these metrics out there that really have no direct result of, was my advertising or cost spent generating the results I want it to, right? And so, what the average time on your page was, well, do you care? Or do you care how many leads you actually got from that marketing activity? Now, people like us care. We look at those metrics because we use that from a trackability to see what are we doing right or wrong or other things. But when we get to the actual point of the client, I really think the client's first key performance indicator really should be cost per lead. How many leads do they get for what do they spend for those leads? And then were those leads valuable enough? And if you're not starting there, then why delve into how many pages per session the average user had? It just doesn't have a lot of value from that perspective.
Sure, that makes complete sense, because bottom line, if something is not easy, for a client, it is very unlikely they're going to use it. So it's not helpful. So I know, Jim, that you're offering our listeners a free consultation. So could you talk a little bit about that? Who is it for? How does it work? And we'll put everything in the show notes.
Yeah, happy to. So we developed this just for your listeners. And the idea is really we're going to do a checkpoint analysis of what you're doing today, help you measure whether or not it makes any sense. And then if we think we can do something better, we'll be happy to tell you that as well. And you can get to that just by going to our website, which is turtlehut.com/free-consultation. Or just mention it in a web form or when you call that you heard me on the show, and we're happy to honor that then as well.
Okay, wonderful. And we will put that link in the show notes so people can just click on it. And so this consultation is perfect for small business owners that want to generate more leads.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so all you business owners, you small business owners that are listening in, this is for you. Go to the show notes, click on the link, and talk to Jim. He'll give you the straight skinny on what's working and what will just waste your time and cost you a lot of money. So to kind of finish up for today, Jim, how else, is there not any other way people can reach you through your website, turtlehut.com, that we'll put that in the show notes as well?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to reach out. Happy to chat with anyone.
Okay, wonderful. And so to finish up, please do check out the show notes for all the links from Jim about generating leads on social media to get your free consultation. And do please share us on social media, tell your friends, give us good reviews. And thank you for listening to the Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders podcast. Till we meet again, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, really large bills.
You've been listening to Salesology, Conversations with Sales Leaders, the art of faster, easier, more profitable sales. Be sure to follow so that you don't miss a single episode. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share it with your friends. Tune in every week for more exciting insights and wisdom on transforming sales. And until next time, visualize yourself surrounded by cash, very large bills.